Welcome to Potter Revisited, episode 104. I'm Tori.
And I'm Shay.
Today we are discussing Chapter 6 of Order of the Phoenix, the noble and most ancient house of Black.
Or, as we like to call it, his family tree is a circle.
Yes, so as we left off from last chapter, Harry's at the Order of the Phoenix headquarters, which is at Sirius's parents' house at Grimmauld Place, and Harry, at the end of last chapter, got some serious Voldemort info dump, despite Molly's discomfort about that. So now the kids are being sent to bed and told not to speak to each other and theorize.
Like that's gonna happen.
Exactly.
So yeah, Harry and Ron are staying in one room, and then Ginny's gonna be with Hermione in another. And Harry gets into the room and he starts putting his pajamas on, and they're talking about how there's a portrait on the wall. And I was just thinking about how uncomfortable I would feel changing or sleeping in a room with any wizard or magic paintings. Like, they talk, they walk, they see. Like, I would be not able to have paintings in my bedroom. There'd be no paintings in the bathroom. Like, it's creepy when you think about it.
Even the mirrors talk. Like, remember that mirror in the Weasley's house that tells Harry he looks scruffy? Like, even the mirrors talk to you. I would want nothing on the walls. I'm like, don't even look at me. Especially the Grimmauld Place art. I'm assuming it's not great.
Yeah, I can only imagine you're, like, changing and it's shouting out racist slurs and you're like, excuse me.
Yeah. But Harry and Ron are in the dark and they're whispering to each other, being like, and Ron's like, what do you reckon? They just found out the biggest bomb, obviously, that Sirius let drop about the weapon. And at this moment, Fred and George apparate into Ron and Harry's room. And there's this moment where Ron yells and they apparated on his knees. And that's such a funny image to me.
It's funny because they're talking and like theorizing about what this weapon could be. And Fred is kind of right when he says that it's probably at Hogwarts, because the prophecy itself isn't at Hogwarts, but it's about Harry, and Harry is at Hogwarts. So like, he's not wrong about Dumbledore wanting to keep the important thing somewhere safe under his protection where he can check in on it, you know? He's not wrong.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, they do bring up the Philosopher's Stone and how Dumbledore kept it there, and I'm like, that's pretty accurate to go off that, like, evidence train of thought.
They're smart. The twins are smart.
Yeah, but there's this moment where they bring up, like, you know, what the weapon could be, and they're theorizing, like, these big kind of things that could do a lot of damage, and George brings up, well, like, something doesn't need to be, like, big to do damage. Look at Ginny, and I just love that they acknowledge how powerful Ginny is.
Yeah, he literally says, size is no guarantee of power. Look at Ginny. And it's like, yes, he sees his sister, he fears his sister is power. You know? Ginny Weasley is powerful.
It's a nice little tidbit.
It's so nice that they know that about her. It's the kind of thing where they would never say that to her face. They'd never be like, Ginny, you're kind of scary. But they feel that way. And they honestly admit it to, you know, Ron and Harry.
This is a big book, I think, for Ginny's character development as she becomes closer entwined with Harry and the trio and everything. Before this, she's really just Ron's little sister who kind of has a crush on Harry, and we don't get a lot of her character. But here we're kind of building up little tidbits, like, okay, Ginny's really good at hexes.
Hex, yeah, she is.
But yeah, Harry has this weird dream once, you know, the twins leave and they decide to actually go to bed. And he dreams about Hagrid teaching care of magical creatures. And he's like, oh, we're learning about weapons this term. And there's like a cannon fire. I really like Harry's just, like, not Voldemort dreams, but he just has weird dreams in general.
Maybe it's low-key PTSD from the blast-ended skrewts.
Yeah, I would probably have PTSD from that.
Especially because, like, he describes them as, like, little, like, creatures with cannons on them. And I'm like, that's basically just the blast-ended skrewts.
Yeah. Usually his dreams are connected to things he's going through. Like the dream he has about Cho, comparing him to, like, Cedric and stuff like that later on. So it's a bit different, but also he's dreaming about corridors and doors and locks and stuff, which is Voldemort. But the next morning, the kids and Sirius and Molly are working on decontaminating, I think it's like the drawing room or something, from Doxies and other creatures. And we find out that Sirius is keeping Buckbeak in his mother's room, which I love. He's such a petty king. We talked about how his mom's so petty for the portrait that's stuck on the wall. And here Sirius is keeping a creature in her room and feeding it dead rats and stuff like that.
Yeah, I really love, that Buckbeak gets what is probably the biggest room.
Yeah.
Because good, correct, and fair. But also incredibly spiteful towards Sirius's mom. And that just makes it so much better. Like, it really does. The horror she would feel if she knew what was happening in her room. Probably giant Buckbeak poops, just like all over the carpet, you know? You love to see it.
I love that. But there's Harry notes this like forced politeness between Molly and Sirius when they interact with each other, where Molly's saying things and she's kind of looking towards Sirius and he's like agreeing with her. And it's just, it has to be so uncomfortable. If you've ever been like in a room with people that obviously have tension, but they're not like resolving it, it's like walking on eggshells. You don't really want to set stuff off.
Oh, yeah.
It's not great.
Have you ever been a child of divorce?
No, but I had roommates.
Yeah, it's basically honestly the same thing. It's the same thing.
But Molly is using Gilderoy Lockhart's book for household pests. And I'm just wondering, does she know that Gilderoy was outed as a fraud? Did Ron tell her? Does she know? Was this book maybe ghost written so it's actually useful?
I think Ron kind of was embarrassed by his mom's crush on Gilderoy to begin with. So I'm pretty sure the first thing he told her after second year was over was, Mom, he's a fraud and a schmuck. And I'm sure she deep down doesn't want to believe it, but the man did attack her son. But I think his books are probably good because he like stole all the information from actual smart wizards. So I'm sure it's still accurate.
Yeah, that's why I was thinking maybe ghostwriter, because his other books were definitely more about him, in quotes, in the stuff he did, which was on other people. But I'm assuming for like the knowledgeable like textbooks, but here's how you get rid of this household pest. It was probably information.
I'm sure it's plagiarism to some extent. It's someone else's research and he just... Ghostwriter's legal and like with consent though. I feel like this is plagiarism.
Yeah, that's true. But anyway, yeah, they're getting rid of some doxies in the curtains, so they need to spray them with
Doxycide.
And here we have Fred and George kind of are messing around with the doxies. They get told off, and Harry kind of sees them off to the side, and they kind of confirm their joke shop plans, which are actually pretty solid for the few months that we've left off from Goblet of Fire.
They've got a pretty juicy mail order business going on. I think it's also really interesting that George has, in this chapter, they specifically mention a snuff box wrapped in a tea towel and at least 3 doxies all in the same pocket. And I just want to say, I can barely get any pockets in pants. Never mind ones big enough for a snuff box and 3 doxies. The male privilege is ridiculous.
Actually, it's funny mentioning this because 2016 is really big online right now because apparently Gen Z thinks it was like the golden age of like culture or whatever. I was in college in 2016 and skinny jeans were, the thing you wore every day. My roommate and my friend, who's a guy, we both have black skinny jeans from the same brand. So one day I was complaining about pockets, and he suggested that we switch pants to kind of see, because he's really skinny, so he assumed he could fit into my jeans. We swapped pants. They did fit him really well, which was scary. But yeah, he looks at the pockets, and he's like, "You can't put anything in here." And I put my hand in like the man's pockets, and like it goes like up like past like my wrist. Because we used to have him when we went out and we didn't have pockets for like our cards and our phones and stuff, we would give them to him to keep in his pockets. So yeah, discrimination of pockets on jeans. So going back to the twins and their joke shop plans, I tell Harry they're running like a mail order service right now. And they're advertising in the Daily Prophet because Molly refuses to read it anymore because of how they treat Harry and Dumbledore. And I find that's so funny that they take advantage of that. But I was wondering, does any other order members like Arthur or like other members read the Prophet just to see what they're saying and then just see like an order form, which, might point to Fred and George?
I think it's twofold. One is that, like, just because you hate what something stands for doesn't mean you won't engage with it. Like, I hate everything to do with Elon Musk, but I continue to use Twitter because I like seeing, pictures of dogs and videos of dogs behaving and dog of the week and all that. So I continue to engage with Twitter because of that. And I think it's probably the same thing where, like, they hate what's being said about Harry, but they sure do love the crossword puzzles or whatever. The other thing is that Molly's going through a lot, and I think anyone who feels close enough to Molly to talk to her about seeing Fred and George's ad also knows she's going through so much with Percy, they don't want to stress her out.
Yeah, I feel like Fred and George have also been quite vocal about wanting to run a joke shop, so I feel like even if Arthur saw it, he's just like, you know what, they already lost Percy because of issues with him getting a promotion and everything. They don't want to risk alienating more sons and everything. So it's just not a priority right now. So I can see no one really bringing it up with her.
They have bigger fish to fry. And also, Molly's very on edge. Like, if you bring that up, you might get your ass kicked.
Yeah. Well, speaking of Molly getting pissed off, Mundungus rings the doorbell, and he is trying to use the headquarters to stash some cauldrons that he probably stole.
The ones he probably stole when he was supposed to be keeping an eye on Harry Potter.
And Molly goes down to confront him and is telling him off. And Fred and George are just relishing in this moment of Molly yelling at someone who isn't them, which I love for them.
You gotta enjoy these moments, you know?
So while Molly is dealing with Mundungus and the stolen cauldrons, Creature sneaks into the room, and we are finally introduced to Creature the house elf, who really is the complete opposite of Dobby.
I also kind of love the boldness of Creature. He just flat out is like, I wonder how Harry Potter defeated the Dark Lord. And George, who is absolutely killing it this chapter, says, don't we all? Oh, wait, no, it's Fred. I lied to you. Fred, who is not killing it as much as George this chapter, but still there, says, don't we all?
Harry's probably wondering how he did it too.
He's like, fuck if I know.
Creature is definitely a lot different than Dobby. He's like, what Harry assumes is he's really old, so he's walking hunched over. He's like saying things like he has an internal monologue, but he's saying it out loud, and Harry's not sure if he knows that he's doing that. We don't really know if he knows he's doing that. But yeah, Creature's going around and he's saying some pretty like prejudiced, racist, terrible things. And obviously we know now, like, you know, he's just a product of like what he was brought in upon.
Product of his abusive environment.
And Dobby was kind of an anomaly where he realized he was with, you know, racist, prejudiced, terrible masters. And he was kind of able to like, you know that was wrong and make his own mark. But for other people, like, you know, you are like a product of like your environment, and that's what Creature was.
Yeah.
Obviously, they tell Creature off for calling Hermione a mudblood and all these terrible things that they're saying. And Sirius, of course, comes in, and Sirius really dislikes Creature.
Which is fair.
And he's treats him very not like nicely, which is I think it makes sense because we learn later on all like this is like being in this home is just trauma for Sirius. He grew up with Creature. Creature never liked him. It's just a reminder of all the things that he doesn't want to, I guess, be a part of again.
I think Creature is the last living thing that Sirius can manifest his family anger at, like his childhood trauma.
Yeah.
So even though Creature's a jerk and doesn't necessarily deserve Sirius's respect, the abuse given that Creature didn't choose to be there, he had no options. So it's not fair to be mad at him because he didn't choose that and didn't have an alternative, but it is also kind of fair for Sirius to have those feelings.
Creature leaves because Sirius doesn't want him. They basically say that Creature has been taking the stuff they're getting rid of and like hiding it to save it because he's very, you know, loyal to Sirius's dead mom and family. So Sirius gets rid of him. And Sirius explains, obviously, to Hermione, because Hermione's still on spew and wants to save the elves, that they can't free Creature because he knows too much about the Order, which obviously is a big hint to what comes back later on in the book. But Sirius moves to this big tapestry, which is the family tree of the Black family, and explains to Harry and, I guess, the rest of them how he was removed from it, basically disowned. And it's just this really kind of sad insight to Sirius's family and what he grew up in.
Yeah, and Harry is really shocked by like how many people Sirius is related to that he knows. People like the Malfoys, Tonks' mother, and he's kind of shocked by it. But Sirius reminds him that like there are only so many pure-blood wizards, so families that are pure-blood elitists can only marry each other. So when you think about it, Bellatrix being batshit crazy kind of makes a lot of sense, just when you take into consideration all of the inbreeding. It's kind of a wonder that, like, the Weasleys are so functional. I mean, seriously, this man's family tree is more of a circle?
It's like when you look at the royal family, or the royal families, and just Europe, and they're all interconnected.
Pretty sure Cleopatra married her brother at one point. Like, it's just...
It's like Sirius says, there's not a lot of options when you want your children to marry other purebloods. It's probably someone you're related to.
Which is not healthy, ladies and gentlemen. Non-gendered and non-defined. It's not what we want. Don't inbreed.
Yeah, but going into a bit of insight into Sirius and kind of like what he was brought up in and just returning to a place where he clearly suffered so much. I do wonder what happened to Sirius, because he tells Harry a story about how he was basically disowned when he was 16 because he ran away from home. So Sirius was very young when he left home. He went to go to Harry's dad's house and was basically adopted by James's parents. So I'm looking at like this, like what was the final straw that caused Sirius to kind of be like, I can't do this anymore, and run away? He was so different from his family, and despite the front he presents, he's very clearly internalized a lot of the stuff that happened to him.
I feel like that's around the age a lot of people think about running away, I suppose, especially if you feel different, if you don't feel welcomed at home. It's also probably a lot easier to think about running away from home when you live most of the year at Hogwarts anyway. It's just like, it's not like you need to find a place to live and rethink where you keep your belongings and everything. You just need to find a place to be for like 3 months of the summer, you know? So I think the consequences are different, but also 16 is when you start breaking the rules. It's when you actually start to realize that like the things you like and the way you feel help fundamentally shape the person you are. So Sirius is realizing it's not just that I dislike my family, it's that I fundamentally disagree with the things they value. And that's when you start to realize it's not just a small disagreement, it's deeper than that, and it's morals. And that's when you're like able to sort of start putting that together and realizing I'm not just an angry teenager who fights with their parents. I'm an angry teenager whose parents are monsters, and I'd like to opt out.
Something I thought that was interesting is that Sirius says he ran away when he was 16, but what happened with Sirius and Snape also happened when he was 16. So the prank, in quotations, is when he played on Snape, and Snape references this to Dumbledore when he says Sirius Black was capable of murder at 16 when he tried to kill me. So I wonder if that played into any of it at all.
I don't think that particular incident would, because while Sirius would get in a lot of trouble, I don't think his parents particularly give a shit about him almost killing someone who's not a pureblood. Like, I think they'd be like, don't make us look bad. But I don't even think that's the thing he's done that would bother them the most.
I'm just wondering if it was more an outlet for obviously the trauma he's internalized, because no normal person decides I'm going to play a prank on this guy that's bothering my friend by revealing that my friend's a werewolf, his deepest, darkest secret.
And maybe getting this guy eaten by my friend. It's definitely like a teenage boy Gryffindor combined with just like his prefrontal cortex isn't fully developed. So he just like can't understand that the consequences of his actions are severe and permanent. He's only imagining the end result he wants to imagine, which is Snape is hurt but not dead and traumatized and afraid. It never bothers him again. And everyone else thinks it's hilarious and funny and he's so cool. Like that, he only pictures the ending that he wants from it. He can't really sit down and think about all of the potential outcomes.
Yeah, very difficult impulse control.
It's a brain development thing combined with a teenager thing, combined with a Gryffindor thing.
So we get some foreshadowing to Sirius's brother Regulus, who becomes a big player later on. And it's kind of a big shame knowing what Regulus accomplishes. And Sirius just assumes that he was a Death Eater who got cold feet and was killed. And he just doesn't really think much about his brother. Thinks that he was soft and he was like basically a bad guy, when in turn we find out that Regulus found out what Voldemort was doing and was trying to stop him.
Yeah, he's one of those people that was kind of shitty, learned some things, educated himself, whether intentional or not, and then decided to make the good guy choice, you know? And it's sad that like he never really gets celebrated for that or recognized for that, but hopefully Harry will remember that, you know? The people who find it out probably appreciate that.
Yeah, it's just sad that he never knew, because I feel like he let go of his family because of their morals and ethics and everything, and he just thought his brother was one of them. But in turn, he probably related to Sirius more, and maybe Sirius is one of the people that he maybe thought about, and it's like, you know what, Sirius was right this whole time.
I think maybe given Sirius's, like, his overall maturity level and how much trauma he had before Regulus's death, I think maybe it's better for Sirius from a coping standpoint to not have reasons to like and miss Regulus, because I think that would just be another person who he lost, who he could have loved. And I think it's easier for him to have lost a family member who he in his mind had already lost years ago.
Yeah, putting him in a box with his parents.
Yeah, I think him finding out now that his brother switched teams and was a good guy would make Sirius feel really guilty. and sad, and he'd feel a loss of something he didn't even know he had. And I just don't think he could handle that as a character at this point in his life.
Yeah, so Sirius kind of goes into details about his parents' kind of views of Voldemort, and I thought it was very realistic and kind of relatable to our current political climate, where he describes his parents as Voldemort supporters, but not Death Eaters. They just believed Voldemort was right and he was doing the right thing. And he said a lot of people that had those views, like pureblood supremacists, thought Voldemort was right, but got scared when they saw what he was willing to do for his views.
Yeah, I think it's very real. Like, for a long time, I used to think there were a lot more people that were empathetic and kind and understanding in the world than there were people who were selfish and borderline evil. But it turns out a lot of people were terrible people this whole time, and they just weren't saying it out loud. And these days, people say it out loud, and it's shocking how many people are just completely morally bankrupt, and you would just assume that their silence was just them being quiet, but it turns out they were waiting for an opportunity to be terrible.
Sirius is definitely going through it. He seems very pained and kind of lost in thought, and I just think that it's not healthy for him to be in this house. He's just not happy, and he has to relive basically whatever traumas he faced growing up in that house before he left. He has to live in that house that he hated, that he was desperate to escape, and he's stuck back there because of Dumbledore. I'm like, Dumbledore, you should have known better. But they decide to go clean out this cabinet that has a bunch of black memorabilia and just dangerous stuff in it. Sirius mentions that his grandfather was Phineas Nigellus, and he was the most disliked headmaster Hogwarts ever had.
Boy, is Snape gonna prove him wrong.
Yeah, but Phineas Nigellus also comes in later, so it's a little foreshadowing there.
A lot of important stuff that's just really casually mentioned in the background.
Yeah, there's lots of foreshadowing in this chapter.
Oh my gosh, yeah, they pull out this Order of Merlin that Sirius's grandfather won, and Sirius is like, oh yeah, he basically just gave the Ministry a bunch of gold. And that is so the most real political stance in the history of real life. Like, you just give the government a bunch of money and suddenly you're like, here's a great big award. And if you don't get a great big award, despite giving people a bunch of money, you could always threaten to annex Greenland.
Yeah. And then, of course, they're still, cleaning, doing all the things, Harry mentions that he thinks that it's not really cleaning, it's warring against the house with all these creatures and everything.
It really is they could write a short horror story just about the terrifying things going on there. For example, Ron is me. In that I will also fight Voldemort, but if spiders are involved, I am so out of there. I'm out. I'm not interested. It's not happening. That's nightmare-inducing.
Yeah, I'm not doing any bugs or anything.
Some bugs I'll handle. Spiders, arachnids, not my scene. Also, I know when they're talking about a ghoul that haunts the toilet, they mean bathroom because they just refer to bathroom as the toilet. But I am literally picturing a ghoul that just crawls out of the literal toilet when people sit down to pee. And that is the ultimate nightmare.
Oh no.
And I am horrified.
Yeah, that's terrible. But Harry is reminded, amongst all this cleaning and work they're doing, that he actually has to still go to the hearing at the Ministry of Magic to see if he's allowed to go back to Hogwarts or not, which kind of threw him because he was so busy and back with his friends that he forgot about it.
Which is fair. He has a lot going on, and Miss Weasley's keeping them hella busy. I also just think it's crazy that, he doesn't have a lawyer. A, he's a minor going into court, and B, he's a person who is not educated in the law going into the court.
Also, he doesn't really have parents because Sirius can't really be his guardian when he's wanted for murder and hiding from the cops. So Harry doesn't really have any advocate.
No. A lawyer. Again. Lawyer.
Lawyer up, Harry.
Their legal system is a steaming pile of garbage. Seriously, Harry. Lawyer up.
But at this moment where Harry asks Sirius if he's expelled, if he can stay with Sirius and not go back to the Dursleys. And I'm like, what do we think would happen if Fudge was able to get Harry expelled? What would Dumbledore want to do with Harry?
He would absolutely make Harry go back to the Dursleys because magic, love, protection, and dumb shit like that.
But I feel like he would have a hard time managing Sirius because if Harry's expelled and Sirius hates Grimmauld Place, he's just I want to be where Harry is. Because Sirius actually sarcastically says when Harry's like, can I stay here with you if I get expelled? He's like, I can't believe you would want to stay here. The Dursleys must be terrible.
Yeah, the Dursleys are terrible. Harry would be way better off in Sirius's depression house than in the Dursleys' child abuse house. I think Sirius and Harry would go on the run together. It would be like a goofy buddy cop movie going around town on Buckbeak, you know?
I would love that. Harry would be like, what's that, the thing, like unschooling or whatever, where you just go do passion things that the kids are interested in.
Yeah, Harry can't do math, but boy, oh boy, does he know how to Quidditch.
Harry knows how to climb up coconut trees, so it's fine.
It's all that truly matters.
No hate to unschooling. I think the concept's cool. That's just what it reminds me of. But Sirius is not capable of any kind of schooling.
Certainly not.
But one of the biggest things in this chapter that I think is so interesting is obviously we get the locket Horcrux mention. And just like a throwaway line in this like very simple paragraph about all like the evil and cursed items they're finding in this cabinet and around Grimmauld Place. And it's just like so, just like in the middle of this, something you don't even think of. It's just like a locket that they all try to open but they can't, and they just like throw it away. And it comes back later. And it's just so interesting that it was mentioned so early and just so, like, relevantly.
It's a very subtle foreshadow.
And, of course, there's the moment where Harry sees McGonagall come into headquarters dressed in Muggle clothes. And I can't imagine Minnie G in Muggle clothes. It feels unnatural.
Oh my gosh, honestly, it's like a discomfort level equivalent to toe shoes. Like, it gives me an ick.
We kind of get an insight into Harry's kind of mental state right now, because despite being with his friends and generally being on good terms with Ron and Hermione, Harry is still keeping a lot of his thoughts and emotions bottled up into himself. He's just making himself isolated. He's not sharing in with Ron and Hermione how he's feeling about the hearing and about Voldemort and everything. He's still feeling pretty isolated despite having his support system, so it's definitely something he's probably still dealing with regards to his PTSD and everything. He's not able to share his thoughts and everything that would probably make him feel better. And it's kind of how we see him lash out later on. And also he notes that Ron and Hermione, he always sees them whispering together, probably about him. Because obviously they're concerned. They know Harry's not doing well, but he's not confiding in them like he usually would.
So how are they supposed to know? Like, they can't read his mind.
Dumbledore, this is all your fault.
It is all Dumbledore's fault, though.
Yeah. Speaking of Dumbledore, Harry finds out that Dumbledore came into headquarters while Harry was asleep and didn't come talk to him.
What a dick.
Yep. So we basically end the chapter with Harry preparing for his hearing, where Arthur is going to take him into work early with him and hang out with Arthur at the Ministry until his hearing. And they're like, yeah, it's totally fine. You'll go into, like, the office of Bat and Bones. She's strict but nice. Like, she's fair. Don't worry about it. And obviously, that goes wrong. But yeah, next chapter, we'll be going into the belly of the beast, the Ministry of Magic.
Ooh. Let's get corrupt.
Yeah. Do you have any final thoughts before we wrap up?
My final thoughts is, again, with so many children, the Weasleys got really statistically lucky that none of their kids are Bellatrix level insane from all the inbreeding. You know? Maybe there's like another 2 Weasley kids no one talks about, you know? Because they went off the deep end.
Didn't Ron say in like the first book that he had like a second cousin that was like an accountant or something?
That's how wizards go insane. They become accountants.
Yeah, I'm excited just to get into the hearing and we see kind of the corruptness of the Ministry in general. And so I can hate on Fudge.
As is your right.
And also probably hate on Dumbledore a bit too, because honestly, Dumbledore's just doing bad shit.
Dumb shit.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Potter Revisited, and we'll be back next time to discuss Chapter 7 of Order of the Phoenix, the Ministry of Magic. And you can send any thoughts or feelings.
Send us your feelings.
I guess you can't send feelings. You can send any thoughts you had about today's episode or previous episodes to us on social media at Potter Revisited, or you can email us at potterrevisitedpodcast@gmail.com, and we'll see you next time.
Send us your feelings. Bye.